If you're new to landscaping, it can be so hard to understand how much time or effort you should expect a new landscaping project to take. I like to use this to explain to my landscape design clients what to expect, and I'd like to share that with you today. And if you're new here, hi, my name is Eve. I'm a horticulturist and a landscape designer, and this is Garden Project Academy. So if you're hoping to DIY your landscaping, then I'm here to help you with online courses and resources just to make it easier for you to create something beautiful and beneficial with this opportunity that you have to do some landscaping. This little visualization is not perfect, but it gets the idea across. This is what it can feel like when you take on a new low-maintenance landscaping project. There's an initial investment of time and effort that pays off once the landscape gets established. Imagine this curving arrow as your journey over time from left to right, and then up and down represents the amount of effort that you invest. So we have this nice roller coaster curve. You start out with whatever you're currently doing for maintenance, and this can vary. Maybe you're doing nothing, maybe you're more down here with regards to effort, but you have a super boring or a sterile space that maybe you want to bring back to life. Or maybe you're spending a ton of time right now managing a jungle of weeds or caring for a really high maintenance lawn, and you hope to reduce that. And you'll notice something very important when it comes to the end goal. The end goal is not a no-maintenance landscape. And that's because a no-maintenance landscape does not exist. We're going for a low-maintenance landscape. One exception, if you're focusing on more ecological restoration type landscaping, which is awesome, then that can be something that requires very, very minimal maintenance once established. But for the most part, a typical landscape is going to require some level of maintenance indefinitely. There's no such thing as a no-maintenance landscape. Either way, there's going to be some investment of time and effort. As you make changes to your landscape, you improve your landscape, and after that point, that effort will decrease. You start out with what you're currently doing, and from there you'll spend a lot of extra time planning, clearing the area, pulling weeds, sourcing plants, improving the soil, mulching, installing a new garden bed, caring for plants until they've filled in, and then after that point you'll get those benefits of a low maintenance landscape. If you have never taken on a landscaping project before, then it can be at this point where you start to question everything. What have I done? I thought that this would be less work. And assuming that you're actually installing a well-planned low-maintenance landscape, and I'll share more on that in a bit. As your plants fill in, you'll need to do less watering, less weeding, less mulching, and you will eventually end up with this low-maintenance landscape that you were originally seeking. If you'd like a more specific example, many people are surprised to learn that even their irrigation efforts should be a curve like this too. They should decrease over time. But first, I'm excited to announce that this video has a sponsor, BetterHelp. Just about everything relates to mental health, and landscaping is no exception. Your landscaping can be another stressor in life, another thing that needs to be managed, but landscaping at the same time can also be a fun way to relieve stress and to create something beautiful. BetterHelp is a platform that makes finding a therapist easier because it's online, it's remote, and by filling out a few questions, BetterHelp can match you to a professional therapist in as little as a few days. It's easy to sign up and get matched with a therapist. There's a link in my description below this video. It's betterhelp.com/gardenproject. And by clicking that link, you support this channel, and you also get 10% off your first month at BetterHelp. Thank you, and thank you to BetterHelp for supporting this channel so I can keep on making videos about plants and how we can make the world a better place through what we do in our backyards. Here's how your irrigation efforts should decrease over time. And best practices are going to be slightly different depending on where you live, but the overall concept still applies. I am going to speak to where I live so I can give you a specific example. So here in the Pacific Northwest corner of the USA, it's relatively rainy most of the year, except for in the summer where we naturally experience a dry period. This means that irrigation is basically only needed in the summer. During this first summer after planting, I recommend deep and infrequent irrigation somewhere around twice per week, though this does depend on the exact site conditions, if there's heat radiating off of something like a wall, or if you're close to a sidewalk or a street, and your soil can affect this as well, how much sun the site gets as well. So this does depend. But then that second year, we decrease the amount of water. So this could go down to a deep and infrequent watering just once per week. And then that third season after planting, again, it depends. This could be every other week. The idea is that we're training these plants to have really deep root systems, so the roots are reaching down for that water. So it's just giving them the appropriate amount of stress while still looking out for them as they're establishing those root systems. Here's the most important part though. After those first few growing seasons, if you selected climate appropriate plants, then you ideally will not need to irrigate after that. That's kind of a myth in landscaping, that the landscape must always indefinitely require irrigation. It's not necessarily true if you're selecting the right plants, putting them in the right place. You also may want to install plants that might not be well adapted to your climate for another reason. Maybe it's something that produces food, and you just understand that you will need to irrigate this plant through any dry periods indefinitely, and that might be okay with you. Our dry period here in the Pacific Northwest is getting more intense, which means not only that more time of the year must be spent irrigating newly installed plantings, but also that more care must be taken to thoughtfully select plants that are able to tolerate less frequent precipitation or less consistent precipitation and more heat than even just a decade ago. But if you would like to learn more about how to select the right plant for a certain spot, be sure to check out my free mini course, How to Choose the Perfect Plant. That's linked in the description below. And all you need to sign up for that is to create an account, so a username, a password, so you can keep track of your progress as you move through the course. And it's got a checklist, it's got links to tons of wonderful resources for finding great plant possibilities, so I hope that helps you. Again, that's linked in the description below. But in summary, this is an example of how your time and efforts will decrease over those first 3 years, basically, after planting. And of course, this depends on where you live, but I hope that gives you an understanding of how you have this curve, right? This investment, and over time you water less and less as the plants fill in. And similarly, here's an example of how your mulching efforts can decrease over time. If you removed any aggressive or invasive weed species carefully at the start and then mulched properly, usually about 3 inches deep minimum, of course that depends on the material you used and regional best practices, but it's usually a lot deeper than most people expect. Then that first year, you're not going to be doing a lot of weeding. It'll just be some things that pop up every now and then. But the spreading of this mulch initially, of course, it takes a lot of time and effort. Mulch will eventually need to be reapplied or top dressed periodically, and this is usually just a little bit. It could be about 1 inch, maybe 2 inches, and it also depends on how quickly the material you chose decomposes. It could be in 1 year, 3 years, 5 years. A good way to tell that you need to reapply or top dress with some mulch is if the number of weeds that start to pop up in the space are beginning to increase. The more your mulch breaks down, the more weeds are going to start germinating in that space. So once it hits a point where that trade-off feels worth it for you, it's time to reapply. Remember that the soil must always be covered by something, and this could be weeds, this could be mulch, or this could be plants. Or maybe something else in your landscape, like a pathway, a patio, a greenhouse, something else that's covering the soil or taking up space. So the more densely you plant, the less you will need to mulch or weed. And if you are the kind of person who wants to have space in between plants where there's mulch, so there's a lot of open space in between plants, then you will indefinitely need to be reapplying mulch every now and then. But assuming you're planting a little bit more densely in certain areas, then as these plants fill in, that's less mulching and less weeding over time. And even so, again, because there's no such thing as a no-maintenance landscape, there's always going to be some level of watering, weeding, and even irrigating that you may want to be doing in your landscape. A few weeds are always going to pop in, even in a beautifully, perfectly mulched landscape. And there's no such thing as a mulch material that lasts forever, and you should always use organic woody mulch materials, because anything that's synthetic, it's just not going to be as effective, even if they're saying so. And I've got tons of mulch resources where I talk about different materials and pros and cons. I'll link to that in the top corner of this video. But a low maintenance landscape will be very manageable with just a few garden play days every now and then where you go through, you pull out the weeds, maybe you top dress some mulch. Keep in mind that this curve is also why sometimes it's best to wait to take on a landscaping project until you have more time. Or you could just take on a very small project, like a corner of your yard. You do one small bed that you can then expand or connect to other beds later on. Or you can take a break at this point, right here, after mulching. It might look a little bit funny to have a big mulched area for a little while, but that's okay. Landscaping is always a lot easier and much more beneficial for everybody when we accept a little bit of imperfection. And I mentioned earlier that all of this is only true if you're installing a low maintenance landscape. So you have a good plan, you have an understanding of low maintenance landscaping practices. It is possible to install a high maintenance landscape intentionally or unintentionally. So if you'd like to learn more about that, I'll make sure it pops up right here so you can learn more about low maintenance landscaping best practices. I hope this helps to give you a better understanding of what to expect when taking on a new landscaping project. Thank you so much for watching, and happy gardening.